Hello everyone, back in plenary. I want to start in 1-2 minutes, a couple of minutes, so please get seated and get ready for the afternoon. Thank you. Okay, glad you all made it back, so we can start this afternoon session. And my intention is to get through the agenda as it is foreseen for Thursday, and I will add two ComDocs, Com1 and Com2, so the working group on trade in stony corals and the nomenclature. I will want to get through those, and I will leave the RST and captive breeding for tomorrow morning so that we have time to have a good look at these documents and be prepared for the discussion of RST and captive breeding for tomorrow morning. Good. With this, I would like to open the next agenda item, which is Songbird Trade and Conservation Management. It's document 34, and I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. So, document AC 32 Doc 34 was prepared by the Secretariat and provides an update on the implementation of the decisions on songbird trade and conservation management that were adopted at COP19. Which can now move forward thanks to funding secured from Sweden, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America. The first phase will be the production of a preliminary study with an overview of the current state of knowledge on the scale and scope of international songbird trade to consider the management and conservation priorities of songbird taxa involved in such trade. This study is expected to produce a preliminary list of the songbird taxa, so species and species groupings, that are traded internationally. The study will also inform the preparation of several documents on the conservation, trade, management, enforcement, and regulatory priorities of the songbird taxa identified from the preliminary study as being in international trade. The Secretariat is in final discussions with technical experts on the preparatory work and hopes to be able to sign the contract before the end of the month. Details of these studies are outlined in paragraphs 5 and 6 of this document. An in-person technical workshop will be convened by the Secretariat in the last quarter of 2023 to consider the management and conservation of songbird taxa involved in international trade. The Secretariat is in discussions with a potential host country and will provide information on the exact dates and venue through a notification to the parties. The workshop should have around 80 participants, including members of the animals and standing committees, representatives from range, exporting, transit and consumer states, as well as relevant intergovernmental and non-governmental organisations. And the objective of the workshop will be to review the studies produced and determine if and which songbird taxa are negatively impacted by international trade and make recommendations to ensure the conservation of those taxa as needed. And the results of the workshop will be presented for consideration by the Animals Committee at its 33rd meeting in 2024. And the Animals Committee is invited to note this document and oral report. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat, for presenting the document. So I open the floor for comments on the document. I see Oceania has asked for the floor. Oceania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank the Secretariat for the work they've done on this paper, and also obviously for the work they've done developing towards this workshop. And I especially thank Sweden, UK and the USA for financial support of this preliminary study and the proposed technical workshop. Looking at the information that has been gathered before the workshop in paras 5 and 6 of this document, I wonder whether actually sufficient consideration has been given to the consumer end of the supply chain to understand and hence manage the demand of the international trade. So questions like, well, what makes some species more desirable than others? Are wild-caught birds really better songsters than captive birds? Is the rarity of a species seen as a desirable trait? Or can buyers be educated to avoid at-risk species? So those sorts of questions from the user end rather than the supply end seem to be a little bit missing in the sort of points that are being looked at during this study. So I wonder if that can be taken into account, please.
Thank you, Oceania. I think these are very important and valuable questions, and they will be included into the study. So thank you very much for those. Any other comments, questions from the members? Yes, Asia, you have the floor.
We thank you for the Secretariat for preparing all this document. I just want to add probably there is important to include also the information on the captive breeding of some songbirds in that point, because as we see the supply of the songbird mostly come from wild as well as from the captive breeding. So the level of captive breeding is probably very important to see successful or still need to be improved. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is another important aspect that will be included in the study. So thank you very much. So I now turn to observer parties. I see the United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States thanks the Secretariat for this document and is pleased to provide funds, and thanks Sweden and the UK for their contributions as well. We would like to stress the importance in ensuring that the workshop, if at all possible, can include interpretation in the 3 working languages of the Convention. And we would also like the workshop to be focused on songbird trade in all the CITES regions, not just Asia, where work has been done, and we're keen to understand more about the songbird trade in the Western Hemisphere and Africa. And the other item I would like to share with you is that the United States basically is undertaking efforts to develop a funding opportunity for the study of songbird trade in the Western Hemisphere via our Species Conservation Catalyst Fund on songbirds. The SCCF is a new funding initiative within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Combating Wildlife Trafficking Program that will support projects that study and conserve songbirds traded domestically and internationally from the Caribbean and the Guianan Shield for singing competitions. The first funding notice of funding opportunity, as it's called, will be announced this August 2023 with applications due in December, and we will basically inform the Secretariat of this so that we could reach the appropriate parties, and the awards would be issued in the spring of 2024. So good news on the songbird front.
Thank you very much, United States. Indeed, very good news. And if I understood correctly, the workshop will not only be focused on Asia, it will be focusing on all regions. So, yeah. I have Mexico who has asked for the floor. Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Our delegation would like to thank the Secretariat for the information presented, and we take note of this document, but as on the subject of the conservation of amphibians, we suggest that the results of these important studies are shared with the Animals Committee in anticipation of the technical workshops that are planned for the last trimester of 2023, because as with the amphibians, that could be through a notification. Having advance information could assist the participants in preparing for the workshops and will provide the Secretariat with additional feedback for the planning of the workshop. We would also like to put before the Animals Committee the potential that the workshop be held in a hybrid manner so that participation by more countries can be permitted, in particular those that are parts of the commercial trade chains. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. In relation to making available the documents that are being produced, the Secretariat intends to proceed the same way as with the amphibian documents, so they will be made available. In relation to the hybrid holding of the meeting, I think I have to turn to the Secretariat to ask whether this is possible or foreseen. Thank you. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just in relation to the possibility of a hybrid meeting, we will certainly look into that, but obviously there are cost implications for doing that, but it is certainly something that we will look into. And just to clarify that we certainly do intend to have interpretation in the 3 working languages as well. So that is, and again, that has a cost implication, but we will see what is possible, because of course we want to have the maximum participation as well.
Then I have DRC who has asked for the floor. DRC, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DRC would like to support the position of the United States on this workshop. We have many songbirds in our region. What the United States said about interpretation in the 3 languages of the convention is extremely important in all regions, and especially for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, DRC. And as just mentioned by the Secretariat, it is foreseen to have all 3 languages, translation in all 3 languages of the convention, so that we have a maximum participation and understanding. I then move on to observer organizations. Okay. It would be obvious. BirdLife International, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We very much welcome the document AC32, document 34 on songbird trade and conservation management, and thank those parties who contributed to funding this important work. As we know, songbirds are greatly underrepresented in the CITES appendices relative to their prevalence in trade. In relation to the analysis foreseen under the decisions, I would like to draw the committee's attention to the establishment of the Friends of Songbirds, an informal group of observer organisations with the goal of ensuring songbirds are effectively considered across the CITES agenda. We collectively look forward to supporting the work envisaged under the decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see the North American region has asked for the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the comment from the U.S. on considering different regions and not only to limit to Asia, so I'm wondering how much flexibility is for that and the possibilities also to contact some experts previously for to be able to consider more regions. This is a very important group, and it's good that it will be translation into 3 languages. It will be much better if there is online participation to have an idea on how big is the task we have in front of us regarding songbirds. Thank you.
Thank you, North America. Secretary, to respond, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Just to confirm that it is a global study, so it is not focused just on one region. It is. It will look at the entire global trade, I can't remember what the second issue was I was going to say.
Hybrid.
No, we said like we will look into what is possible for the. I know what I was going to say now exactly. So in order to, in a similar line as the amphibians, we will also be issuing a notification after this meeting, seeking information from experts, from parties on with all the questions that will feed into all of the preparatory documents. And again, we will make it available, the draft document available on the website for everyone to have a look at in advance. So I thought that was what I was trying to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I mean, in relation to these notifications, be it for amphibians or songbirds, it will be very important that the parties who read those notifications make sure that that they contact the experts and make them aware of the need of input of these experts, because the management or scientific authorities themselves may not be the correct people, but they do have experts in the country. So please make this information really available broadly. Okay, I have no more parties asking for the floor, so I would open the floor for observer organizations, and I see HSI.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize, I missed the very beginning of this discussion, so this question may have been answered. But relating to the question that the Secretariat just answered, when this workshop is conducted, I hope that there's going to be, or will there be, looking at the domestic trade component. I realize that is outside the CITES arena, but the case is that in many situations, international trade is a small, sometimes even feeding off massive domestic trade, and the domestic trade in some of these species spills over into an international trade, particularly when populations are depleted and then they begin to look to neighboring countries to provide more specimens. So is the effect of the domestic trade on international trade going to be part of the workshop? I hope that it will. Thank you.
Secretariat?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the question. In terms of looking at the trade, we will look at the trade in its entirety, but obviously the focus then will be to narrow down on those species that are in international trade. But obviously to get a sense of the impact of the offtake of all of the species, we would look at trade in total, but the focus on international.
Any other observer organization asking for the floor? Okay, I don't see any. So with this, I think we can note that the Janus Committee notes the document and the comments made on the holding of this workshop. So think that concludes the item 34 on Songbird, trade and conservation. So we move on to agenda item 39 on queen conch. So it's also a document prepared by the Secretariat. So Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document AC32 Doc 39 was prepared by the Secretariat and provides an update on implementation of the decisions on queen conch adopted at COP19, including several projects that the Secretariat has been involved in recently concerning this species. As noted in document COP19 Doc 77, the Regional Queen Conch Fisheries Management and Conservation Plan has been endorsed by all range states, but as demonstrated by the outcomes of the 4th and 5th meetings of the CFMC, OSPESCA, WCFC, CORFM, CITES Working Group on Queen Conch, which I will refer to now as the Queen Conch Working Group, there has been limited progress in terms of its implementation. The 6th meeting of the Queen Conch Working Group was held in San Juan, Puerto Rico on the 16th of March this year. Several range states and regional partner organizations participated, including Bahamas, Belize, Jamaica, Panama, European Union, France on behalf of Guadeloupe and Martinique, Honduras, Nicaragua, St. Lucia, the United States of America, as well as WCFC, CORFM, CFMC, OSPESCA, and US NOAA. And the CITES Secretariat participated in this meeting remotely. The Scientific, Statistical and Technical Advisory Subgroup, or the STAG, of the Queen Conch Working Group met on the 12th and 13th of April of this year, and the Secretariat also participated remotely in that meeting. And thanks to funding from the United States of America, NOAA, the members of the STAG will continue to work with the Secretariat on the development of simplified guidance for making NDFs for Queen Conch through the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute, or the GCFI. This work will start shortly and will involve consultation with range states. The intention is to present the results as a case study to the NDF workshop that will take place at the end of this year. Another important project reported on is the Blue Biotrade project on Queen Conch, in which the Secretariat has been working in partnership with UNCTAD and OECS. The project is entitled Seizing the Trade and Business Potential of Blue Biotrade Products for Promoting Sustainable Livelihoods and Conservation of Marine Biodiversity in Selected Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The overall objective of the project is to empower small-scale coastal producers from OECS member states to produce and trade Queen Conch products in domestic, regional and international markets under the Blue Biotrade environmental, social and economic sustainability criteria. And this includes CITES provisions concerning international trade in the species. The beneficiaries of the first phase of this project are Grenada, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Phase 1 of the project ended in January of this year, resulting in several publications, including a stakeholder mapping of the Queen Conch value chains of the 3 beneficiary countries, individual country case studies for the 3 countries, and a summary of the 3 case study recommendations, as well as a regional plan of action for Queen Conch in the Eastern Caribbean. And all of these publications are available online. On the UNCTAD website, I should say. So phase 2 of the project is now underway and will be implemented until mid-2026. Subject to available funding, this phase may implement priority areas of the regional action plan that was developed during phase 1 and may include further stock assessments for other participating states and may also develop Blue Biotrade action plans for the value chains of other non-CITES listed species. During phase 1 of the project, the Secretariat was able to provide targeted assistance to Grenada to help it overcome current trade suspensions based on a lack of annual reporting and the review of significant trade for Queen Conch. In the context of the latter, the Blue Biotrade project funded a Queen Conch stock assessment for Grenada. And this stock assessment included a training workshop for Grenadian Fisheries Authority staff, as well as those from St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and a field survey that involved the local fishers. And this stock assessment should contribute to the production of an NDF in connection with the review of significant trade suspension for queen conch from Grenada. In the context of paragraph B of decision 19.234, the Secretariat would like to draw the Animals Committee's attention to a project involving the University of Rhode Island and the GCFI, which will look at genetic variation as a way to identify illegal, unreported and unregulated fisheries, with steps geared towards identifying genetic discontinuities across populations or stocks in different islands or nations, finding the molecular markers that allow distinction of the different populations and stocks, and developing a molecular assay that uses the molecular markers to identify product caught by IUU fishing. And thanks to financial support from the Netherlands, the Secretariat is funding a pilot phase of this project. And range states will shortly be invited to participate and will be encouraged to provide samples for analysis as part of this project. And progress updates on this work will be provided to the Animals and the Standing Committees as they become available. So the Animals Committee is invited to note this document and oral report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretary, for the presentation of that document and its contents. I now open the floor for comments from members of the committee. I don't see any member asking for the floor, so I open the floor for observer parties. And observer organizations. Okay, so my conclusion is that this Animals Committee takes note of the document and the oral report as presented by the Secretariat. Thank you. So document AC32 Doc 40 has been prepared by the Secretariat, so I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Document AC32 Doc 40 was prepared by the Secretariat and reports on progress in the implementation of the decisions on marine ornamental fishes adopted at COP19. At COP19, the Secretariat reported that it had secured funding from the European Union, Switzerland and the United States of America to compile workshop documents on marine ornamental fishes biology, conservation status, trade and management, and applicable trade regulations. These draft studies were made available to the parties at COP19 in an information document and its annex. These documents will be used in support of the technical expert workshop on marine ornamental fishes that is referred to in paragraph A of decision 19.237. Having secured additional funding, the Secretariat is planning to convene an in-person technical workshop in the last quarter of 2023 or the first quarter of 2024 to consider the management and conservation of marine ornamental fishes involved in international trade. The Secretariat is in discussion with the potential host country and hopes to provide information on the exact dates and venue at a later date. The workshop should have around 80 participants, including members of the Animals Committee, representatives from range, exporting, transit and consumer states, as well as fishery stakeholders, industry representatives and relevant intergovernmental and non-governmental organisations. And the objective of the workshop will be to determine if and which marine ornamental fish taxa are negatively impacted by international trade and make recommendations to ensure the conservation of those taxa. The results of the workshop will be presented for consideration by the Animals Committee at its 33rd meeting next year. Paragraph A of Decision 19.238 directs the Animals Committee to agree a terms of reference for the technical workshop referred to in paragraph A of Decision 19.237. In consultation with the Chair of the Animals Committee, draft terms of reference and a modus operandi were developed and circulated to the members of the committee for review. And based on comments that were received from Mexico and the United States of America on behalf of the North American region, an updated draft of the terms of reference is presented in the annex to this document. So the Animals Committee is invited to consider and agree to the terms of reference and modus operandi for the technical workshop on marine ornamental fishes presented in the annex to this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I will now open the floor for comments from members. I don't see any. I see agreement. So I would open the floor for comments from observer parties. UK, you have asked for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK recognises the importance of this area of work and are supportive of a technical workshop to consider the trade in non-CITES listed marine ornamental fish worldwide. We are generally in agreement with the aims of the updated draft terms of reference. We agree that the information shared and the outputs from the workshop can potentially make a contribution towards all of the outcomes listed. However, we do not agree that the workshop itself will generate all of these outcomes that have been presented, and so we would like to propose a minor amendment in paragraph 2 of the terms of reference, where we propose replacing the word generate with contribute to, if the Animals Committee would be amenable to that. We feel the outputs of the workshop are clearly set out in paragraph 3. With regards to the modus operandi, we have some concerns around the proposed prioritisation of participants. Whilst we recognise that for logistical reasons there may be a need to place some restrictions on numbers, we strongly consider that this should not be to the detriment of ensuring a broad representation of interests and expertise in order to ensure a rich dialogue and well-informed outcomes. Therefore, in the interests of maximising transparency and ensuring relevant participation, and in line with the approach taken for the International Expert Workshop on Non-detriment findings, we would request that the Secretariat issues a notification seeking expressions of interest from all parties who want to participate and ask them to bring to the attention of relevant experts and stakeholders to encourage their participation. Should there be a need to restrict numbers, this could then be done in consultation with the Chair and the members of the Animals Committee. We believe it is also essential that the opportunity is provided for those unable to attend, participate or view online, and we welcome the Secretariat's efforts to make that provision. Finally, in COP19, document 80, the Secretariat recognised the valuable role of industry and hoped that representatives would continue to play an active role in the implementation of decisions on marine ornamental fishes and participate in any technical workshop. And the UK welcomes continued industry representation as well as engagement, of course, from all other stakeholders. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. Just give me a short moment. Okay. In response to the UK, I mean, the decision is pretty clear that we should be, it should be as broad as possible. But due to the fact that due resources and so on, we may have to restrict, but the idea is to issue a notification asking for interest of all those interested organizations and parties, and then based on the feedback, see if we do have to make a prioritization along those lines as indicated in the document. That's basically the idea, okay? And concerning the possibility to have the meeting held, you wanted also to have online participation, is that correct? Okay. I have to give the floor to the Secretariat on that one.
Again, I think our response would be very similar to what we just explained for the previous item, the songbirds, that we will look into it. Obviously, we want to maximize participation. The difference between this one and the previous study is that these studies are already available. And we will also issue a notification calling for any additional material that might be considered by this workshop. So it's not solely going to be on that study, but we know that there is additional work out there that the workshop could also look at. So we will issue a notification for all of that, invite expressions of interest, and then see, you know, subject to available funding, if what is possible to maximize participation. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, in relation to your proposed change of wording, the workshop will contribute to the following outcomes. I think that is a wise one. Thank you very much. So any other party, observer party wishing to take the floor? United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that the United States shares the concerns of the UK about ensuring we have the broadest possible and appropriate participation in the workshop. So we look forward to seeing the process for ensuring that happens. Thank you.
So no more parties asking for the floor. I open the floor for observer organizations. I see Fondation Franz Weber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Secretariat for developing document 40. On behalf of Fondation Franz Weber, Center of Biological Diversity, Pro-Wildlife Species Survival Network, ADM Capital Foundation, Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, Humane Society International and Animal Welfare Institute, we support the terms of references proposed in document 40. With an estimate of 15 to 100 million individuals from over 2,000 species traded each year, marine ornamental fishes are one of the most widely traded species groups in the world. Yet monitoring of this trade is minimal, despite several failed voluntary efforts and concerns about the sustainability and limited captive breeding in many species. Indeed, breeders' reports suggest that only 25 marine ornamental fish species are being captive bred in commercial numbers. We support the UK's and US's statement on transparency and eagerly anticipate participating in the upcoming workshop to expand global understanding of the species, numbers of specimens, vulnerability, and ultimately how to improve regulation of the trade. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fondation Franz Weber. I have Ornamental Fish International, who is asking for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking on behalf of the European Pet Organization, the Pet Advocacy Network, and the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association. We are pleased to see that the long-awaited workshop on marine ornamental fishes seem to get closer to become a reality. We align ourselves with the comments made by the United Kingdom and the United States and thank you, Chair, and the Secretariat for clarifying that the participation should be as wide as possible. We are, though, concerned that the modus operandi for the workshop, as it is outlined in Doc 40, suggests the Secretariat will do the prioritizing of species for consideration, as well as on the people and organizations able to attend. It seems inappropriate that the Secretariat is given such broad powers. We would think that it should be the parties, not the Secretariat, to prioritize issues for discussion. More worrying is the Secretariat's wish to limit participation in the event. The trade in marine ornamental fishes is a very important issue affecting hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, and decisions should not be the exclusive purview of a selected few. While Ornamental Fish International is honored to be specifically mentioned in Doc 40 as a relevant participant, the complexity and the potential implications of what will be discussed in the workshop means that these discussions should be open to all, including the industry that will be directly affected. Also concerned that inadequate consideration is proposed to be given to livelihoods impacts by the workshop. Whilst it does say the workshop will consider the potential benefits of sustainable harvest on species conservation and livelihoods, we think it equally important that it considers the impacts of any potential management measures and regulations on people's livelihoods. Without this consideration, the net impact on coral reef ecosystems could be negative for conservation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ornamental Fish International. I think there is a slight misunderstanding of the powers of the Secretariat. This prioritization will be done in consultation with the chair of the Animals Committee. So it's not solely the Secretariat who will have this task, this difficult task, maybe, we will see. But it will be done in consultation with the chair of the Animals Committee. And I mean, this will make sure that we have as broad participation as possible. In relation to the limitation on numbers, it's a question of budget. It's just simply like that. There's not enough funding around to have a 200 people meeting, even if we would get that many experts or interested parties to participate. So it's just a question of the funding that is available that allows for such a number meeting to be held. So I mean the idea of having online participation will certainly be looked at, but we have to see how far the money goes. Any other comments? I think, oh yes, I see Indonesia. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. On upcoming workshop on marine ornamental fish, we are happy to convey that we are happy to be a host of the workshop, and the formal letter will be in short time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia, for this offer. It is very much appreciated, and we are looking forward to seeing the letter, and we are hopeful that we will be seeing each other then in Indonesia for the workshop. So thank you very much. I see IWMC. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would just simply like to associate IWMC with the comments made earlier on by the observer from the Ornamental Fish International. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IWMC. Okay, so with this, we do have a host, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. The Animals Committee takes note of that. And thanks, Indonesia, for hosting the meeting. The Animals Committee also notes the document and adopts the terms of reference and modus operandi as amended in this meeting. Okay, thank you very much. So now we move on to agenda item 42, periodic review of species included in appendices 1 and 2. This is also a document prepared by the Secretariat, and I open the floor. Thank you.
I think this is my last one, so I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice as well. Okay, so document, this is a joint document, so document PC 26, Doc 35, AC 32, Doc 42 was prepared by the Secretariat. This short document recalls the task of conducting periodic reviews of species included in Appendix 1 and 2, directed to the Animals Committee, under Resolution Conf 18.2 on establishment of committees, and the process for undertaking such reviews as set out in Resolution Conf 14.8 Rev Cop 19 on periodic review of species included in Appendix 1 and 2. A new list of species was scheduled to be selected for review at the first meeting of the Animals and Plants Committees following COP19. However, the Secretariat reports that it was not able to secure the funding to undertake the assessment required under paragraph 3b i of Resolution Conf 14.8 in sufficient time to have it ready for this meeting. Should the required funding become available in time to undertake the assessment, the outputs will be presented to the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee and the 27th meeting of the Plants Committee, respectively. At the Plants Committee, the Secretariat made a commitment that if the funding was not available, that it would look at alternative ways of producing this analysis for consideration at the next meeting. And finally, the document notes that the current status of ongoing periodic reviews for animal species and plant species are presented on the dedicated web page, Periodic Review for Species Included in Appendices 1 and 2 on the CITES website. The committee is invited to note this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I open the floor for comments. I see the nomenclature specialist has a comment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting a little bit ahead of our ComDoc, but I would like to draw the attention of the committee to the fact that the Nomenclature Working Group recommends that the committee consider the inclusion of the toucan, Rhamphastos vitellinus citrulamus, in the periodic review process. I'm not entirely sure how we would go about proposing this at this point, but I would certainly seek your perspectives on our ability to seek possible countries, parties to lead on this periodic review, because this species would benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you, nomenclature specialist. We cannot do it at this stage because we haven't adopted your ComDoc. So I think we may have to quickly come back to that whenever we have, we can leave this document open until we have seen the ComDoc, and then we may take it up again in this non-finished document. But thank you for making us aware of that. So we might be able to add it to that. Yes, so thank you very much. Any other comments on document 42? From members, no. So observer parties, I see Mexico. Mexico, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Thank you, Chair. As we said at the 26th meeting of the Plants Committee, the periodic review of species is a pillar of the Convention because it ensures that species are listed in the right appendix after 10 years since their listing, depending on their conservation status and the need for regulation of international trade in accordance with Objective 1.4 of our strategic vision. We understand the difficulties that a lack of external resources can have on the list of species for periodic review, And bearing in mind that this is the first time it is happening, and to not set a precedent, we think it's important that the scientific committees consider this situation and put it to the standing committee and to the conference of the parties to avoid this situation occurring in the future. And we hope to be able to look at the relevant list at the next meetings of the scientific committees in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. I'm not quite sure if I understood what you're asking that the Animals Committee should be forwarding to the Standing Committee. It's not quite clear to me what we should forward, because I mean the report says we don't have any cases, we didn't have the funding to do the analysis. So what exactly would you like that we convey to the Standing Committee?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, it's to send it to the committees so that they can evaluate the situation and find solutions and try not to set a precedent so that this doesn't occur again. Thank you. So we could find alternatives together to avoid this type of situation arising again in the future.
So to avoid that there are no species proposed for periodic review. Okay. Well, the problem is also often we depend on parties who do the analysis, but I agree that it would be good to have that process working. I must think a bit, just a second. Okay, just to be clear, the resolution says that this all is subject to external funding. So if we want to have a change in that, then we would need to have a proposal to the COP to amend that resolution. Yes, Mexico?
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Probably the prioritization of resource allocation may well be the subject that could be considered. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I think the best way forward would be that we do have a document, a proposal for the COP to amend this resolution, and I think that would be the best way forward. Okay, any other party asking for the floor on this matter? Observer organizations? IWMC, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Chairman. Having participated in the Plants Committee meeting where a similar discussion took place and Mexico took the floor to comment along the same lines as they have done today, I think it's important for the committee to acknowledge that this process to revise the appendices is very important for CITES. It's very important to have the best possible listings of species in the appendices. We know that this has always been an issue. It's always been difficult to find funding or parties who are willing to conduct studies on certain species, but we have also recorded successes. So I think that the recommendation of taking note of the document is one thing. In the Plants Committee, what was suggested was that we not just take note, but also underscore the importance of the process so that in future there are species that are submitted for assessment as required. I think that the idea accepted now of passing this to the committee is a good thing, and perhaps the Animals Committee should also, in addition to taking note of the document, emphasize the importance of the process to revise the appendices. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, IWMC. So if I understood correct, you're suggesting that the Animals Committee not only notes the document, but also notes the concerns raised by Mexico and emphasizes the importance of the process of periodic review. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm asking the committee if they would agree with the way I've just summarized the proposal from IWMC, and I need your okay for this. Okay, I see nodding and hands up. So I think that will be the conclusion of the committee. So thank you very much. Yes, but yes, I just forgot we haven't closed the document yet because we will come back after having looked at the ComDoc on nomenclature. Okay, I haven't closed the document yet, so we now can move on to agenda item 17 on non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction. Document prepared by the Secretariat. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In the compendium AC32 Comp, the Secretariat presents progress on the implementation of decisions 19.189 to 19.191 on non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction, which was adopted at the 19th meeting of the Conference of Parties. Thanks to the generous contribution by the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, a subset of the funding required for the implementation of Decision 19.189 has been secured, but additional funds are needed to convene the workshop. The Secretariat issued notification to the parties, number 2023-050, to request information on experiences in making non-detriment findings for specimens taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction with a deadline of the 31st of July. A response was received from Peru, and other parties are invited to submit a response and share the process used as well as challenges encountered when making these types of NDFs. Under the decisions of NDFs, the workstream on NDFs for marine or aquatic species, including regional implications for shared species, introduction from the sea, and NDFs for marine or aquatic invertebrates is currently ongoing and will address in part the making of NDFs from areas beyond national jurisdiction. The Secretariat plans on preparing background documents for the workshop, which incorporates the responses from the notification mentioned earlier and the outcomes of the second international workshop on NDFs. Subject to funding and availability of a host, the Secretariat plans on convening the workshop in early 2023 in order to report to the next meeting of the Animals Committee. Sorry, 2024, to report to the next meeting of the Animals Committee. The Animals Committee is invited to take note of the information relating to this matter contained in the compendium. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat, for presentation of the document. So I open the floor for comments from members. Observer parties. Yeah, I see the UK, yes.
Thank you, Chair. As the UK submitted the document to COP19 on non-detriment findings for Appendix 2 species taken in areas beyond national jurisdiction, we of course support a technical workshop being convened and scheduled for early 2024. Recent COPs have seen several listings of commercially important aquatic species in Appendix 2, particularly sharks, including a large number at COP19 in Panama. And many of these species are taken on the high seas. However, making NDFs in such situations is complex. It's very difficult for any individual scientific authority to make an NDF without having access to information on the status of the stock, other relevant information, and levels of offtake, including illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing and bycatch, being taken by vessels flagged to their own and to other states. We support the ambition to develop clear, coherent guidance to help all parties in making NDFs for commercially exploited aquatic species taken on the high seas. To this end, we encouraged increased sharing of data and other information from and between relevant stakeholders. We agree it would be sensible to hold back-to-back workshops with the aquatic species listed in the appendices workshop due to an expected overlap in attendees. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for these comments and your suggestion to have these two work streams back to back. I don't see any other observer party asking for the floor. Observer organization. I see IUCN. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is given on behalf of IUCN, Traffic, WCS, WWF, and ZSL. We believe that the coordination of parties catching and trading migratory aquatic species is essential to ensure that these activities are legal, sustainable, and traceable. Species that migrate between countries' marine and inland waters, exclusive economic zones, and into areas beyond national jurisdiction are inherently vulnerable to overharvest and have been evidenced to have poor reporting and less effective management. This was highlighted for certain shark species in Traffic's missing shark reports, in proposals submitted to CITES COP19, and also in the COP19 document on introduction from the sea. Indeed, as noted in the introduction, the issues of shared stocks and transboundary coordination on NDFs are focal areas for the aquatic species non-detriment finding working group, and engagement on the present agenda item has been highlighted as a recommendation from the Sharks and Rays Working Group at the present Animals Committee. As such, we urge parties to improve regional coordination, including with relevant regional fisheries bodies, for both producing NDFs and delivering other management measures for shared stocks of migratory species international trade, particularly in areas beyond national jurisdiction, and to respond to notification 2023-050 that relates to this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. Any other organization asking for the floor? I don't see any. So my conclusion is that the Animals Committee notes the information relating to non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction as contained in the Compendium AC32 Comp, and also notes the comments made on the floor, especially the idea of having the workshops on this matter be back-to-back to the issue of, let's see, the name, aquatic species listed in the appendices that we will just have to look at now. So thank you. So we would move on then to agenda item 28, aquatic species listed in the appendices. So Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In the Compendium AC32 Comp, the Secretary reflects on the decisions 19.189 to 191, adopted at the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties on aquatic species listed in the CITES appendices. The Secretariat estimated a total of 80,000 USD to convene a workshop as mandated in the decision and has not yet secured funding. Given the possible overlap in participants of the technical workshop referred to in this decision and the decision on 19.136 on non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction, as just mentioned by the United Kingdom, the Secretariat is considering convening the 2 workshops back-to-back in early 2024, subject, of course, to the availability of funding and the host for the workshop. The Animals Committee is invited to take note of the information relating to this matter contained in the compendium. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I open the floor for comments. Animals Committee members, none. Observer parties. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support this workshop being held back-to-back to the one that we just discussed. We wanted to reiterate our view that this workshop should encourage the broadest possible participation, make sure that all expertise that's relevant contributes to this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. United States. Observer organization. I see WCS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief, but didn't want to be silent completely. And we strongly support work on this issue, building on the extensive discussions on the issue at the last COP. And we agree with the recommendation to potentially hold this workshop back-to-back with the workshop discussed in the previous agenda item on marine species in areas beyond national jurisdiction. Although these are very different issues and shouldn't be conflated, it most likely will involve many of the same experts, parties, etc. So we're supportive of holding them back to back, and we are also endeavoring through some of our contacts with private donors to see if we can help secure some funding as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, WCS, for your support there. I think it's well taken note of, and I think it absolutely makes sense to have it back to back, even if the topics are not quite the same, but it's the same people. Absolutely correct. So with this, I think the Animals Committee notes that document, and we closed this document, so thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item 18. Guidance on non-detriment findings for trade in leopard hunting trophies. So this has been produced by the Secretariat. So Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In the compendium AC32Com, the Secretariat reflects on the implementation of decisions adopted by the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties on guidance on non-detriment findings for trade in leopard hunting trophies. The Secretariat also notes that COP19 adopted amendments to Resolution Conf 10.14, Rev COP 19 on quotas for leopard hunting trophies and skins for personal use, to change the quota indicated for Ethiopia and to remove the quotas for Kenya and Malawi. The Secretariat will reach out to parties with quotas for leopard hunting trophies to exchange information and lessons learned as required in terms of paragraph A of Decision 18.169, Rev COP 19, and with regards to the implementation of paragraph B of the decision relating to the development of NDF guidance, the Secretariat has not been able to secure funding to undertake the work. The NDF work being carried out in terms of Decision 19.132 on non-detriment findings could benefit the development of this species-specific guidance when funds are secured. The Animals Committee is invited to take note of the information relating to this matter contained in the compendium. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I open the floor for comments on this matter from the members first. No comments. Observer parties. I see Austria. You have the floor.
Thank you. We just noted that the recommendation to make regular surveys of leopard populations is restricted to a shrinking number of countries which have a quota according to Resolution 10.14 of COP19. However, population assessments are equally valuable from all range countries of leopards, and comparing data from hunted and non-hunted populations could in the end feed back into the CITES process by enabling the assessment of NDFs for countries which still export and which would help in the next review of the leopard quotas. So therefore, if you find a way to send this recommendation to all range countries, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
We are just checking the mandate and the decision itself. Just a second. Also, Austria, I think even though I agree it would be important to have a better database, the problem is that the decision is quite clear and says all parties which have quotas for leopard hunting trophies established under resolution Conf 10.14. So it's really restricted to those parties.
And to just make this request on a not on a mandatory, but on a free basis to the other countries?
Yes, I think the Animals Committee can ask whether whether parties could be invited, other parties with leopard populations can be invited to provide this information. Yes, we can do that. I don't know how much will be coming back, but we can at least try.
Thank you for your wisdom.
Any other observer party asking for the floor on this matter? I don't. Then observer organizations. I see Conservation Force. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Allow me to give a very short response to Austria. There is a growing number of peer-reviewed papers with surveys on leopard, which are comparing densities, especially densities, in protected areas and national parks. I can make available these papers to the Austrian delegate. Some of them have been presented in the Global Leopard Conference, which has been a very interesting virtual conference that took place in last March. On this particular document, Chair, we have to observation. The first one, it's about this set of decisions that starting from the Conference of the Parties in Joburg and back to last Conference of the Parties, are related to leopards. The Conference 10.14, which established a trade regime, it's very clear in giving the mandate to the Standing Committee to review quotas based on a direction from the Secretariat if the Secretariat found any failure in the trade regime. Now this new set of decisions establish something which goes beyond the resolution and goes also beyond the resolution 9.21, which is the cross resolution with resolution 1014 that established that any of this quota could be only changed through a proposal to the Conference of the Parties. Nevertheless, the Conference of the Parties decided to forgot about this set up in the resolution and goes with this series of decisions. Importantly, we just would like to announce here that we already communicated to the Secretariat the fact that in conjunction with Dallas Safari Club Foundation, Conservation Force is going to fund the $30,000 needed to cover decision 169 letter B, with the request that range states and range state experts be prioritized in the drafting of this guidance. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Conservation Force, for this comment, which is well noted. And thank you for providing funding for this work. Humane Society International, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I'm making this intervention on behalf of Humane Society International, Born Free Foundation, Species Survival Network, Center for Biological Diversity, and Animal Welfare Institute. We thank the Secretariat for preparing the materials for AC 32, Agenda Item 18, regarding CITES guidance on non-detriment findings for trade in Panthera pardus hunting trophies. We also support the need for detailed guidance and the exchange of information on making non-detriment findings for leopards. However, we must stress that this guidance needs to be in place before annual quotas are allocated and should include long-term monitoring of populations and trends. As acknowledged by this committee, this guidance is not yet complete. Accurate population data for leopard populations are lacking, including for some areas where trophy hunting occurs, although some recent studies of select populations demonstrate alarming declines. Further, at the Global Leopard Conference held in March, experts in Mozambique stated that hunting concessions in the Nyasa Reserve were both exceeding the recommended offtake limits and were predominantly taking young leopards, 99% of which were below the recommended age. It was also highlighted in a study in Namibia, which has a CITES quota of 250 leopards. The number of problem leopards removed over a 27-month period was substantially higher than that reported through the government's problem animal permit system. suggesting that management decisions are not being based on accurate data. Given that recently published studies highlight the negative impacts of trophy hunting offtake on the genetic and behavioral integrity of leopard populations, robust independent methods of population monitoring, evaluation, and analysis are critical to the establishment of meaningful NDFs. We remain deeply concerned that the Convention continues to allow leopard quotas to remain in place given the lack of data necessary for completing non-detriment findings. The guidance that the committee is developing is meant to address these very problems, but we don't have that guidance yet. We therefore urge the committee once again to recommend that all leopard hunting trophy quotas be suspended until the guidance to address these issues is reviewed and approved and adequate NDFs are established, or at least to recommend an immediate review of leopard hunting quotas, suspension where uncertainty exists in the relation to population status, management, or the validity of NDFs, and reductions where parties issue far fewer annual licenses than their export quota allows. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you, HSI. I see Suko. Suko, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. In line with the previous speaker, I'd just like to line out a few hypocrisies that we sit with being from Africa. Firstly, leopard have become valueless to many Africans because they can't be utilized. That's why we're having so many damage-causing leopards being euthanized in places such as Namibia and South Africa because they have no value. To stop the trade is a death sentence for leopard, because then no one's going to be willing to keep those leopard on their property, yet alone do the research needed to determine the non-detrimental findings. You don't stop fishing quota from fishing by removing all harvesting, and that's exactly what's being proposed here at the moment for leopard. It will be a death sentence to stop all utilization of leopard pending research. The research is the utilization. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Suko. I do not, sorry? Yes, Tanzania. I do not want to really open a large debate about the sense or about hunting trophy in general. We do have here a document that talks about the guidance materials for making sure that hunting trophy is non-detrimental. And so I would ask you to refrain from starting a general discussion about hunting trophy, yes or no. So please be mindful of that. We have a document with a clear mandate, clear content to look at. So please be mindful of that. I have had Tanzania. Yes, you have the floor. Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for reminding us on the role of the committee and the assignment given with regard to elephant quota. We accept the sentiment raised by some other parties and NGOs regarding the hunting quota for leopard. But I wish to remind them that most of these countries that they have quota established under the resolution Conf 1014, they managed to convince the Conference of Parties that the quota are set at the level that is not detrimental to the survival of the species. We fully understand that it has been critical for most of the leopard range states to conduct thorough population studies for the leopard. And we welcome those who are interested in supporting us in order to know the number. But it's not about stopping the hunting, but at least supporting the range states to know the number. And then after knowing the number, from there now we can start discussing on whether the population is increasing or decreasing, because some of the species, since they have been listed into the CITES appendices, we have not even assessed whether the listing has helped increasing the population or decreasing the population, or whether to submit the proposal to downlist the species after being comfortable that they are not under the threat. So we welcome parties that are interested in supporting us in conducting population studies and thorough researches rather than stopping the hunting of the leopard. I submit, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanzania. I have one more country and then one more organization, then I will close the debate. Yes, I have Senegal. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I fully agree with what you said earlier about the slant of this document about Tanzania. I think that this is not about abolishing hunting. Hunting is a way of regulating populations. However, we need to know about stock levels. We can't continue to hunt without assessing the stocks. Everyone is welcome to come to Leopard Range Danes and help to evaluate the stocks. This will enable us to better regulate the populations. Earlier, I heard an NGO, I don't know if I heard correctly, but these states have populations and they really want to know more about population dynamics and the stock levels so that they can establish reasonable hunting quotas. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the Animals Committee has heard the call for support to parties to evaluate their populations. I think this is well noted. So I have no more. Yes, I have one last, the one that I have seen. That's International Council for Game and Wildlife Conservation, right? CIC, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Humane Society imparted on us a lot of theory with a little practice. And the background, I'm afraid, but I'll leave it alone. As far as I'm concerned, the question I have, do all the parties understand the expenses involved in monitoring and counting leopards? They are nocturnal animals. You can't sit in an aircraft and count them. I know of what I speak. My own property was in the Savi Valley Conservancy. Got a 20-year study on it. It costs a lot of money. And unless you have sustainable use funding it, where's it going to come from? And specifically when you talk about communities, like in Namibia, like in Botswana, large parts of Campfire in Zimbabwe, how are we going to fund it? Is the Humane Society prepared to write the check to get these rather expensive and long-living studies done?
Okay, thank you very much. So with this, I would close this agenda item, and the Animals Committee notes the document and also notes the concerns raised on the floor on this matter, and also notes the offer to fund the work that is to be done as proposed by Conservation Force. So thank you very much. Where's the next one? So we are okay, so I think we have gone through the agenda items that were foreseen for Thursday, and as it is noted, we can now turn to some working documents, working group documents, and I would like first to turn to AC 32.1, which is the working group on trade in stony corals, and I will give the floor to one of the chairs of this working group. So I open the floor for the presentation of that working group document.
Sorry, can I have just a few minutes to pull the document up? Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was a drafting group on stony corals with a mandate to draft a notification to the parties concerning the implementation of Decision 19.177, seeking advice from coral reef nations and coral experts. And so this is for an intersessional working group to support an intersessional working group. And the document is found in AC 32 Com 1. And the working group consisted of at least one producing party, exporting party, we had importing parties, we had members of the exporting trade, commercial trade, and we also had representatives from the fish and aquarium, which is where most of these specimens end up. So it was a well-balanced drafting group and had a very constructive discussion yesterday lunchtime. And so you'll see in here on page 2 of the first page of the annex, but page 2 of the document on 32 Com 1, the proposed notification to the parties I presume I take it as read, and so I'm happy to answer any questions from parties about any factors there, or if they've got any additions, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Eugenia, and sorry for putting you on the spot a bit, but I think it's okay. You don't need to read that the proposed notification. It has been up for review, so I open the floor for comments or changes if they are needed or requested. So I open the floor first for members, then observer parties. I see the United States. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the drafting group for this work. We have 3 minor suggested changes to AC 32 Com 1 on trade in stony corals to add for clarity and consistency. We suggest adding the following text at the beginning of the first sentence of paragraph 3 in the draft notification to the CITES parties. At the request of the Animals Committee, so that would start that paragraph. The next change would be, next we recommend that the titles of Annex 1 and 2 be amended for consistency with paragraph 1 of the notification. In Annex 1, we recommend the title be amended to replace the term proposed with possible. In Annex 2, we propose the title be revised by replacing the term suggested with possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those proposed changes. They have been taken up. Any other observer party wishing to take the floor? Observer organizations? Okay, so I think we can we adopt IC32 COM1 as amended by the United States. So, thank you very much. So we then can move on to AC32 COM2, which is the report of the working group on nomenclature. I give the floor to the nomenclature specialist.
Thank you, Chair. The deliberations of the nomenclature working group can be found in document AC32 COM2 on nomenclature, and it has been available since about 8:30 or 9 o'clock this morning in all 3 languages. The document starts with the membership of the working group and then the mandate. No significant changes have happened to that, except I note the United States precision this morning when reviewing the summary record, that mandate item D was supposed to be provide guidance for the preparation of future checklists based on time-limited extracts from online databases. Going to the recommendations from the working group, the working group recommends that the committee encourages the Secretariat to continue its work on the use of online databases as standard nomenclature references and report back to AC33. We recommend that the committee acknowledges the scientific merit of recognizing the 2 species of African elephants, recognizing that hybrids and mixed species groupings occur, and notes that a relevant nomenclatural standard reference for these animals be further deliberated intersessionally, with the outcomes of deliberations reported back to AC33. Now, in response to some of the feedback from working group members, it was recommended to include a further statement to further request the Secretariat to include in the notification described in decision 19.275A a request for suggested publications that can serve as nomenclature standard references for African elephants. So under that decision, the Secretariat is requested to issue a notification. We're asking that this request for potential nomenclature references be included in that notification. If that recommendation or that finding from the working group is acceptable to the entire committee, then we can remove the square brackets from this sentence. So then further, the working group recommends that the committee recommends that the review of the implications of adopting the HBW/BI illustrated checklist of the birds of the world be continued, and that the report be submitted for consideration by the committee at AC33. Further recommends that in terms of the preparation of future checklists based on, and again we need to specify, time-limited extracts from online databases, the essential elements to include are the valid species name, the taxonomic synonyms, taxonomic hierarchy, and countries of distribution. Desirable but not essential are a distribution map and illustrations for each species. The intersessional working group shall further consider this matter, including options to prepare simplified checklists, with the outcomes of deliberations reported back to AC33. Further, recommends for adoption by the parties at COP20 the checklist proposed for the lizard family Iguanidae in paragraph 20 and for the genus Phrynosoma in Annex 1 to document AC32 Doc 46. And then getting to the point that we brought up earlier, the working group recommends that the committee consider the inclusion of Rhamphastos vitellinus citrolaemus in the periodic review process and include the matter in the mandate of the intersessional working group, pending inclusion in the periodic review process or not, and report back to AC33. And finally, agree to establish an intersessional working group on nomenclature with the same membership as the in-session working group, with a mandate to, small I, continue the work on checklist based on time-limited extracts from online databases. Sub 2II, identify an appropriate nomenclature standard reference for the African elephants. III, review the nomenclatural changes summarized in Annex 2 and Annex 3 of document AC32 Doc 46. IV, consider options to address the present status of Rhamphastos vitellinus citrulamus in the CITES appendices, and finally, V, report to AC33. That concludes the introduction of this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nomenclature Specialist, for introducing that document. Just give me a short moment. Just a matter of clarification on Rhamphastos. You say consider options to address the present status of Rhamphastos. So, and above you say included in the periodic review and include the matter in the mandate of the intersessional working group pending inclusion in the periodic review process. I mean, we can here say we agree with the nomenclature working group, and the Animals Committee includes it in the list of periodic review, but it will not be done in a short time. So are you going to wait for the result of any periodic review before you look at the topic in the intersession working group, or can you look at it without having the periodic review completed?
I think it would be preferable to have the periodic review, have it completed, and reserve judgment on the case from the nomenclature perspective until that periodic review is concluded. However, the intersessional working group can consider this further and take suggest additional steps in parallel to the periodic review, should the species be included in the periodic review. It's also possible that no country, no party will volunteer to carry this out. So then we also need to take further steps, and that again is an intersessional working group matter.
North America?
Yes, I have a question regarding the periodic review process. I believe that at any moment, any party can volunteer to do a periodic review without necessarily being on the list. So it is possible that if the committee invite parties to do it, they can start now and present at the next committee without waiting to have a list to start the whole process. Just bear in mind. So I believe the committee can invite parties to do it. Thank you.
Okay. I think to me it is clear. We can then come back to that when we have other inputs. So do you have any other comments from members of the committee on this document? Observer parties. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go back to the toucan. I perhaps have a suggestion for the committee that perhaps, as Mexico rightly pointed out, according to the resolution, a party could be invited, that perhaps the AC member for the Central American, South American, Caribbean region could contact parties in his region to see if anyone would be willing to undertake a periodic review of that species. And the U.S. would offer technical assistance if they needed in preparing that review, because we think this is an important issue to resolve before the next COP. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I've seen nodding from our colleague from Central and South American Caribbean, so I think that will be the suggestion by the Animals Committee. So thank you very much also for your offer for technical support if a party would be interested in conducting that periodic review. But we will have to say the same thing. I still have to go back to that document, and there we can then introduce it into the record for that specific document. So that was the Ramphastos. So do we have any other comments on the working group report? I see Senegal. Senegal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In paragraph B, acknowledges the scientific merit of recognizing the 2 species of African elephants, recognizing that hybrids and mixed species groupings occur. In my humble opinion, I think that there are hybrids. Instead of saying recognizing that hybrids occur, in French, apparently, hybrids may occur. So Senegal is suggesting recognizing that hybrids and mixed species groupings do occur.
Thank you, Senegal. You're absolutely right. The English is clear. They do occur, so the French version should also exactly reflect that. So that will be changed. Any other comments from observer parties, observer organizations? IWMC, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just to request a small clarification. What we've just discussed and I believe adopted is not something that will amend the working group's report. It will appear in the decisions of the Animals Committee. I think it's important. We don't always distinguish in CITES between the working group reports, which is what we have before our eyes here with the amendments that we've suggested amendments that we've just heard, including by the chair of the working group. But what is being said now will become a decision of the Animals Committee, which is different from what we see in the report of the working group. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, IWC. That was my intention. I wasn't going to put it into this report because there it doesn't have anything to see. It will be a decision in relation to periodic review by the Animals Committee. Okay, I have Conservation Force. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me thank also the chair of this working group and the nomenclature specialist for the excellent work. As a member of the working group, Chair, if a second thought is allowed, is about the recommendation B and this request of relevant standard nomenclature. It was an oversight on my side probably during the working group, but if you go into I think that unfortunately the representative of the IUCN African Elephant Specialist Group has left, but it's very clear from the assessment that the taxonomy, as also reflected in document 46, has already a very clear standard nomenclature. So I don't know, maybe the chair can dissipate this confusion I had, the chair of the nomenclature working group, but this request to have now a nomenclature standard reference on a second thought, it's a little bit surprising because there is a well-defined standard nomenclature for the two species. Thank you.
Thank you, Conservation Force. I give the floor to the nomenclature specialist on that matter.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, as pointed out in paragraph 11 of the main nomenclature document 46, there's actually multiple options available for adopting a standard reference for nomenclature of African elephants. There's two options mentioned. There's additional options possible, which is why we actually would like to hear the preferences of range parties and other parties as part of this notification. Very simply, the simplest approach is to follow CMS in adopting Wilson and Reeder 2005. The problem with that one is that it's not particularly clear in specifying which countries which elephant species occurs in according to them. So if we were to simply adopt that as a standard reference, we have a distributional challenge to clarify subsequently. So whereas the taxonomy and nomenclature of the two species arrangement is clear, the standard reference to adopt for CITES is not clear at this particular moment, and that is what the intersessional working group is seeking to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, nomenclature specialist. Listening to you, I understand why we need to have a look at that, so it's not so clear. So thank you very much. Conservation Force, just shortly, because I think I agree with the proposed way forward by the chair of this working group, but you can have a short statement.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your indulgence. And what the chair of the nomenclature group said is extremely clear, but this is also further clarified in the IUCN assessment. We have two references, which are Mondial 2015 and Kim and Wasser 2021, which gave the precise localities for each species. Thank you.
Thank you, Conservation Force, but apparently there are different views on this according to which document you look at, so I don't think we need to have this debate now. I think it is not clear yet, so that's why I think it's very wise that the nomenclature intersessional working group looks that issue up and comes with a solution back to AC33. So thank you very much. Okay, I myself have a comment on G. The working group agrees to establish an intersessional working group. I think it's the Animals Committee who has to agree and to strike a working group. And also the composition of the intersessional working group is open again. So I think that the conclusion should be that, the working group agrees to propose to the Animals Committee to make that intersessional working group. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's already in there. Sorry, I saw that. So if we don't have any other comments, so the Animals Committee. Nope. Yes. Okay, yeah, that's true. We have to change G anyway, because it says with the same membership, which is not quite correct. I think the Animals Committee is free to form a working group with a different membership to that, yes. Yes, HSI, you have the floor.
Yes, my apologies for perhaps flogging this, but I would just perhaps like to note for the record of the committee that when the issue of the choice of standard reference for elephant was brought up in committee, there were no objections from anyone in the working group to doing this. So I think it was the consensus of the committee that that this was appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Okay, so I would propose to strike under G with the same membership as the in-session working group. And then if you agree, we adopt the working group report as amended now. Okay? Good. Having done so, we now we establish the intersessional working group on nomenclature. And I think the chair is quite clear who that will be. So it's our nomenclature specialist for fauna, Peter Paul van Dijk. Then I'm asking for interests in participating in the intersessional working group from members. From observer parties, United States, China, UK, Tanzania, Senegal, Singapore, France. I have to see, sorry. I can't see far enough, like I should know by now, but it's Zimbabwe. Then I have India, Japan. There you go. DRC. Cameroon. Russian Federation. South Africa. Okay, I think that's for, no, I see Saudi Arabia. Okay, then I open the floor for observer organizations, WCS, Conservation Force, Dallas Safari Club, UNEP WCMC, Parrot Breeders Association, oh sorry, I'm always going way too fast, so. Parrot Breeders Association of Southern Africa, Safari Club International Foundation, IUCN, WWF, HSI, it's getting late again, sorry about that. South African Taxidermy and Tannery Association, thank you. International Fur Federation, IWMC, BirdLife International, Center for Biological Diversity. A question to the nomenclature specialist. We also had the representative of Africa, Ngalia Maha, in the working group. She is not in the room, but you wrote in your report that it would be the same membership. Did she express interest to keep on going in the working group?
I have not heard that interest, but of course I'm always happy to welcome additional participants upon request.
Okay, we will reach out to her that she can ask me if I allow her to be in the working group, and I will of course do that. Okay, because we shouldn't be going over her head here. Okay. So we do have balance, so I think this working group is also struck with the mandate as laid out in paragraph G of the working group report. So thank you very much. So with this, I think we can go back to periodic review, which is document 42, thank you. So I don't have to. Okay, so with what we just discussed, I repeat what my recollection is, what the Animals Committee decided on periodic review. So the Animals Committee noted the document and the concerns raised on the floor and emphasized the importance of the process of periodic review. The committee also proposes to include Rhamphastos vitellinos citrolaemus in the periodic review process, and asked the representative of Central South America and the Caribbean to reach out to seek a volunteer, and notes the proposal from the United States to provide technical assistance in doing the review. Does that about reflect what we decided? I don't see anybody opposing, so I think we will go that way. That will be decision of the Animals Committee on agenda item 42. No, not 42. Yes, 42 on periodic review of the appendices. So in my view, this finishes our today's work. As I said, tomorrow morning we will start with looking at the COMDocs on our captive breeding and review of significant trade, so that we have enough time now to read them and to consult with each other. Yes, North America?
Just one question regarding, maybe I didn't hear it, but about regional reports. Maybe we can make some progress now?
Well, we can do that. Are the representatives ready to give their? No, I see not ready. So there would be 1 and 2 ready, but I would like to do them together. So I think we postpone that for tomorrow morning also. Yes, Oceania?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was hoping to be able to present the Oceania report today, so slip in a happy birthday to Andrew Morrell, one of our delegation at the meeting. But I've done that now, so.
Okay, thank you. So you can still do your report tomorrow, right? Okay, perfect. So I think with this, I would close the session and we meet again tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So thank you very much.
Well done.